Castrato, forgotten musician. For several centuries in Europe, audiences gathered in churches and opera houses to hear a voice that seemed almost impossible. It soared higher than most women's voices, carried farther than any child's, and moved with an agility that felt closer to birdsong than human speech. These voices belonged to the castrati, male singers whose bodies were altered in childhood, so their voices would never change. Their music inspired awe. Their lives, however, were marked by sacrifice, secrecy, and contradiction. The castrati were celebrated as living miracles, and quietly endured as living costs. Today, they are often remembered as a strange historical curiosity, but they were once among the most powerful musicians Europe had ever known. Bodies shaped for sound. The castrato voice existed because the body that produced it developed differently. When castrated before puberty, a boy's voice never deepened, but neither did his skeleton mature in the usual way. Without testosterone, the ribcage continued to expand longer than normal. Many castrati developed broad, barrel-shaped chests and unusually long limbs. This physical structure gave them immense lung capacity, sometimes described as a set of bellows inside the body. Their breath control was unmatched. No modern singer, male or female, can truly replicate this combination of child-sized vocal cords and adult-sized lungs. Because the larynx, the Adam's apple, never enlarged, they did not have to move as much vocal mass to produce sound, allowing for the extraordinary bird-like agility that defined their singing. Yet this transformation came with a hidden cost. Because their bones often failed to harden properly, many castrati suffered from fragile skeletons, joint pain, and early osteoporosis later in life. The very body that made their voices extraordinary could become a source of quiet, lasting pain, long after the applause faded. A system built on silence. Although castration for musical purposes was officially illegal and condemned by the church, the practice continued through what was often called pious fraud. Families desperate for opportunity claimed their sons' injuries were accidents. A fall from a horse, a kick from livestock, even a pig bite. These stories allowed doctors, parents, and church officials to look away, while the system quietly continued. While exact numbers are impossible to determine, historians agree that the scale of the practice was far from small. During the height of the castrato era, roughly between the 17th and mid-18th centuries, several hundred castrati were active at any given time, and thousands of boys may have been castrated over the course of generations. Some estimates suggest that in certain periods, particularly in Italy, the number of boys subjected to the operation each year may have reached into the thousands, even though only a tiny fraction would ever achieve fame or lasting success. Most boys came from poor families. Castration was seen as a gamble, terrible, but possibly transformative. One successful singer could support an entire household, yet only a small fraction of boys became stars. Many were left with altered bodies and ordinary voices, quietly singing in church choirs or disappearing from history altogether. These forgotten castrati were the majority. Idols of the opera house. For the few who succeeded, fame arrived early and violently. Castrati were the superstars of the Baroque era, idolized across Europe. Yet there was a striking paradox at the heart of their success. On stage, castrati almost always played hypermasculine heroes, emperors, generals, conquerors like Julius Caesar or Alexander the Great. They embodied courage, authority, and idealized manhood. Offstage, however, the same society that cheered them often regarded them as unnatural or unmanly. The men least accepted as men in daily life were the only ones trusted to portray the ultimate men on stage. No one embodied this contradiction more vividly than Farinelli. Legend tells of a night in Rome when Farinelli was challenged by a trumpet player in a public contest of breath. The two traded phrases until the trumpeter collapsed from exhaustion. Farinelli then held a single note, swelling it louder and softer before decorating it with dazzling trills, all on one breath. These displays were not merely feats of volume, but of coloratura, rapid acrobatic passages. in which singers executed torrents of precisely articulated notes at astonishing speed. The audience erupted. It was the 18th century equivalent of a legendary guitar solo, retold for generations. In London, devotion crossed into worship. At the height of Farinelli's fame, a woman in the audience reportedly cried out, "One God, one Farinelli." The phrase spread quickly, scandalous in a deeply religious society. The castrato voice had become something more than music. It had become belief. Living instruments, not quite human. The very perfection of these voices unsettled people. Composers wrote comparison arias, in which castrati imitated birds, nightingales, skylarks, doves. Listeners claimed they could not tell where the human voice ended, and the instrument began. Some said the sound was more like a flute than a singer. This added to the strange way castrati were perceived, less as people, more as living instruments. In their own time, successful castrati were often referred to more politely as musici, or even angeli, terms that softened or disguised the physical reality behind the voice. The word castrato itself was considered blunt and was often avoided in polite society. On stage, they often wore massive, ornate costumes. Domenico Annibali, unusually tall even by modern standards, towered over other performers when cast in female roles. Layers of silk, armor, and flowing fabric helped disguise bodies that did not fit ordinary expectations, making them appear almost statue-like, beautiful, distant, unreal. Off-stage, many castrati sought comfort in quieter attachments. Unable to form families of their own, some became deeply devoted to pets. Farinelli, for example, was known to cherish his dogs, lavishing on them the same gentleness and attention he once received from kings. It was a small, tender detail that revealed the loneliness beneath the grandeur. Pride, vanity, and scandal. Behind the voices were strong personalities. Senesino, a famous collaborator of Handel, was notorious for his vanity and temper. During a performance of Admeto, Senesino reportedly lost himself in the emotion of the scene and kissed his co-star Francesca Cuzzoni, the era's most famous female soprano, on stage. The moment caused an uproar. A castrato publicly displaying romantic affection with a woman unsettled the rigid social boundaries of the time. The illusion shattered, reminding audiences that beneath the voices and costumes were human beings with desires, impulses, and flaws. The quiet after applause. Fame did not guarantee happiness. Farinelli himself, after decades of triumph, withdrew from public life. He spent the last years of his life in semi-seclusion, tending gardens, caring for his animals, and playing the harpsichord. He never married. He rarely performed. The man who once moved kings with his voice seemed to find peace only after stepping away from the sound that defined him. Many castrati shared this fate. Applause was loud but short-lived. Loneliness lasted longer. The end of the castrati. By the 19th century, changing musical tastes and moral views brought the tradition to an end. Castration for singing was outlawed, and the Catholic Church officially banned castrati from choirs in 1903. The last known castrato, Alessandro Moreschi, known as the Angel of Rome, left behind fragile early recordings, made when he was already in his 40s and captured by extremely primitive technology. These thin, wavering discs are the only surviving echoes of a vanished sound. Listening to them today can feel like hearing a ghost. Not the full brilliance of the castrato voice, but its fading afterimage. Today, castrato roles are sung by countertenors and sopranists, men who sing in high registers using refined vocal techniques rather than physical alteration. Countertenors typically produce sound through falsetto, vibrating only the edges of the vocal folds, while castrati sang using the full mass of the vocal cords in what would be considered a chest-based production. This difference helps explain why modern singers, however skilled, cannot fully reproduce the trumpet-like power described in historical accounts. In this way, modern music honors the repertoire without repeating the harm. Remembering what was lost. The castrati force us to confront uncomfortable truths. Their art was extraordinary. The system that created it was cruel. They remind us that beauty often has a cost, and that history does not always record who paid it. They were celebrated, mocked, worshipped, and forgotten. They sang like angels, but lived as men shaped by sacrifice. To remember the castrati is not to glorify their suffering. It is to listen carefully to the music and to the silence that followed.
It's time to study new words in context. 1. Agility. Definition: the ability to move quickly and easily with control and precision. Example: the singer's agility allowed him to perform rapid musical passages without losing clarity. 2. Awe. Definition: a feeling of deep admiration mixed with wonder, often caused by something impressive or powerful. Example: the audience listened in awe as the voice filled the entire opera house. 3. Secrecy. Definition: the practice of keeping something hidden or not openly discussed. Example: secrecy surrounded the operation, and few people spoke openly about it. 4. Contradiction. Definition: a situation in which two ideas or facts seem to oppose or conflict with each other. Example: it was a contradiction that singers praised as heroes were criticized in everyday life. 5. Castrate. Definition: to remove the reproductive organs of a male, often to prevent physical development. Example: in the past, some boys were castrated so their singing voices would not change. 6. Puberty. Definition: the stage of life when a child's body begins to change into an adult body. Example: puberty usually causes a boy's voice to deepen. 7. Testosterone. Definition: a hormone that influences male physical development, including voice change and bone growth. Example: without testosterone, the body develops in a very different way. 8. Immense. Definition: extremely large in size, amount, or degree. Example: the singer had immense lung capacity compared to ordinary performers. 9. Bellow. Definition: a loud, deep sound, often compared to a roar. In context, it suggests powerful sound production. Example: the voice did not bellow harshly, but expanded with controlled strength. 10. Larynx. Definition: the part of the throat that contains the vocal cords and produces sound. Example: the larynx usually grows during puberty, causing the voice to deepen. 11. Vocal mass. Definition: the amount of vocal tissue that moves when producing sound. Example: smaller vocal mass allows for quicker and more agile singing. 12. Osteoporosis. Definition: a medical condition in which bones become weak and fragile. Example: many older singers suffered from osteoporosis later in life. 13. Pious fraud. Definition: a dishonest act committed while claiming moral or religious justification. Example: the injury was described as an accident, a case of pious fraud. 14. Far from small. Definition: much larger or more significant than it first appears. Example: the number of boys affected by the practice was far from small. 15. Transformative. Definition: causing a major and lasting change. Example: success as a singer could be transformative for an entire family. 16. Hypermasculine. Definition: showing exaggerated traits traditionally associated with masculinity. Example: on stage, the singers played hyper-masculine warriors and rulers. 17. Embodied. Definition: fully represented or expressed in a visible or clear way. Example: the performer embodied courage and authority through his role. 18. Coloratura. Definition: a style of singing that features fast, decorative notes and vocal ornamentation. Example: the aria was filled with dazzling coloratura passages. 19. Acrobatic. Definition: requiring great skill, flexibility, and control. Example: the acrobatic singing demanded years of intense training. 20. Torrent. Definition: a large, fast-moving flow of something. Example: the singer released a torrent of rapid notes. 21. Unsettled. Definition: made uneasy or disturbed, no longer calm or certain. Example: the unusual voice unsettled many listeners. 22. Comparison arias. Definition: songs that compare the human voice to birds or instruments. Example: in comparison arias, singers imitated nightingales and flutes. 23. Blunt. Definition: direct or plain in a way that may seem harsh or insensitive. Example: the term was considered too blunt for polite conversation. 24. Towered over. Definition: stood much taller than others nearby. Example: the singer towered over his fellow performers on stage. 25. In quieter attachments. Definition: seeking emotional connection in small, private ways rather than public relationships. Example: he found comfort in quieter attachments, such as caring for animals. 26. Lavishing. Definition: giving generously and with great care. Example: he lavished affection on his pets. 27. Grandeur. Definition: great beauty, importance, or impressiveness. Example: the opera house reflected the grandeur of the performance. 28. Seclusion. Definition: the state of living apart from others. Example: in old age, he chose seclusion over public life. 29. Afterimage. Definition: a lingering impression that remains after the original experience has ended. Example: the recording was only an afterimage of the once great voice. 30. Countertenor. Definition: a male singer who sings in a high range using falsetto technique. Example: the countertenor performed roles once written for castrati. 31. Sopranist. Definition: a male singer who can sing in the soprano range. Example: the sopranist amazed the audience with his high notes. 32. Falsetto. Definition: a vocal technique that produces high notes by using only part of the vocal cords. Example: falsetto creates a lighter sound than chest voice. 33. The vocal folds. Definition: two bands of tissue in the larynx that vibrate to produce sound. Example: sound is created when the vocal folds vibrate together.
Comprehension questions. 1. What made the castrato voice sound almost impossible to audiences? Answer: the castrato voice could sing higher than most women's voices, project farther than a child's voice, and move with great agility, often compared to birdsong. 2. Why did castrati retain their high voices into adulthood? Answer: they were castrated before puberty, which prevented the larynx from enlarging and the voice from deepening. 3. How did the bodies of castrati develop differently from other men? Answer: without testosterone, their rib cages continued to grow, often giving them broad, barrel-shaped chests and long limbs. 4. How did these physical changes affect their singing ability? Answer: their enlarged rib cages gave them exceptional lung capacity and breath control, while their small vocal cords allowed for rapid, agile singing. 5. What hidden physical problems did many castrati experience later in life? Answer: many suffered from fragile bones, joint pain, and early osteoporosis because their bones did not harden normally. 6. What was pious fraud, and why was it used? Answer: pious fraud referred to false claims that castration resulted from accidents, allowing families and authorities to bypass laws and moral objections. 7. Why did many families choose to have their sons castrated despite the risks? Answer: they hoped the child would become a successful singer and lift the family out of poverty. 8. Why did most castrati never become famous? Answer: only a small number developed extraordinary voices. Many were left with altered bodies but ordinary voices, and lived quiet, obscure lives. 9. What paradox surrounded the roles castrati played on stage versus how they were viewed off stage? Answer: on stage, they portrayed powerful, hyper-masculine heroes, while off-stage society often viewed them as unnatural or unmanly. 10. What does the Farinelli trumpet story reveal about castrato singing? Answer: it shows their extraordinary breath control, volume, and technical skill, rivaling even powerful instruments like the trumpet. 11. What were comparison arias, and why did they unsettle audiences? Answer: they were arias in which singers imitated birds or instruments. blurring the line between human voice and musical instrument. 12. Why were terms like musico or angelo preferred over castrato? Answer. They softened or glamorized the reality of castration, making the singers more socially acceptable. 13. Why did many castrati form strong attachments to pets? Answer. Because they could not form traditional families. Pets provided companionship and emotional comfort. 14. Why are Alessandro Moreschi's recordings often difficult for modern listeners to appreciate? Answer. They were made with very primitive recording technology when he was already in his 40s, capturing only a faint outline of his former voice. 15. How do countertenors and sopranists differ from castrati? Answer. They sing high using falsetto or refined techniques, while castrati sang with the full mass of their vocal cords, giving them greater power. 16. What does the history of the castrati reveal about the cost of beauty and fame? Answer. It shows that extraordinary art can come from systems that cause deep human suffering, raising ethical questions about what societies are willing to sacrifice for beauty.